Welcome participants. I am Shahab Fazal. I am faculty in the Department of Geography at Aligarh Muslim University. In this session, I would appraise you on geographic dimensions of pandemic. So geography deals broadly with spatial description of phenomena which evolve through man-nature interaction. This includes all possible whys and wherefores for existence of any phenomena found in any part of the earth. This can be natural involvement of phenomena like rainfall, earthquakes, cyclones, or maybe any example of landform like plain, plateau, mountain, islands, etc. Now, another addition to these natural settings could be man and his interactions. The response to these natural settings, this would create situations. Here, man's response would be significant and this mutual interaction could be varied. So all these possible themes with spatial elements are diverse dimensions of geography. So the geographic dimension is holistic in nature as space creates a system for the phenomena. It is also eclectic. This means that geographic information is composed of elements drawn from different interactions. Just to begin, now in this session, the phenomena under consideration is pandemic, which is a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease at a particular time. So focusing geographic dimension means the examination of spatial interactions, understanding patterns and variations over space. To extend our discussion now, geographic space is integral to humans over the Earth's surface. And I want to draw your attention to some everyday basic geographic queries which we commonly deal with it, but they have very definite spatial orientation. Like, where is Aligarh? This is basic, but geography has great relevance here. If you are in Kolkata, you may say that it is near Delhi, west of Kolkata. If you are in Jaipur, you would say that it is east of Delhi. Similarly, it is north of Hyderabad, but south of Dehradun. Another, for example, weather characteristics of Aligarh. It requires knowledge of its location, sunshine, prevailing winds, pressure, rainfall, their timely variations, etc., etc. To explain the physical setting of any location, another question can be like rural-urban population. It requires response in relation with socio-economic setup, but again is linked to specific location. Yet another question about any health facility requires again knowledge of socio-economic locational attributes of the geographic space in which context the question is posed. The most common question about travel path, here it requires geographic orientation also. But individual perspective is critical as there can be many alternatives, so which is suited to the respondent is applicable. I mean, one route can be quicker, one may be cheaper in terms of travel cost, one may be convenient or smooth, one may through market, so you can do some other activities also. So here behavioral attitude may be dominant. All in all, for all these queries, geographic dimension is important and critical, thus have relevance to everyone. And unknowingly we deal with geographic dimension. So geographic oriented queries require geographic spatial knowledge which we possess naturally. This we learn through our experience of the place and understanding about different real world phenomena. Each geographic spatial query, like the initial question inquiring about the phenomena, which is answer to the question of what. Spatial query regarding the location of phenomena, the answer to which deal under where. Geographic query regarding the characteristic or features of the phenomena, here the significance is related with geographic interaction of the phenomena. Same with query regarding development or change or transformation of phenomena. All in all, again I would say geographic knowledge is important for all of us. In geographic spatial information, individual or collective perspective is equally important. Here, how anyone perceives and interacts with the geographic space is important and critical. Not only that, how the interaction is with its existing natural and human setting is important, but the available resources and its people, etc., are equally significant. These interactions explains the processes active on that space that brings to highlight spatial distribution. It's not all about maps, but more about basic geographic, the space-oriented knowledge. These interactions are greatly varied over space, and that is why we refer to term diversity. It is essentially outcome of the notion of geographic space are social creations. I mean geographic specific interaction. Different individual groups, societies, and even nations have different perspective for geographic space. And this difference in perspective is evident in their response to geographic space, their activity, the utilization of space. The perspective can have dominant economic benefit or developmental attitude or emphasis for specific activity or aesthetic beauty or even environment, etc., etc. The man-nature space interaction and resultant outcomes are greatly dependent on it. Like here, the land resource can be perceived as agrarian farms in rural setup, or industrial activity in urban setup, or even for a leisure setup as tourism activity. But other could be air quality status, where in rural areas, urban settlement and hill station may have different air quality status, which is not only dependent on location, but season, time of the day, population, their behavior, or restrictions and guidelines, etc. Now I highlight the evolvement and progress of geographic outlook. Geographic space-oriented knowledge is because of human inquisitive nature. It begins with an individual describing his or her spatial assessment of any location. The characteristic of location observed by that individual. But here, his or her perspective was vital. His observation was dependent on it. But then others, they may observe the same location, then they agree or disagree with the previous individual. So, this way the geographic information gains significance in human interactions. So the crux of the matter is that geography matters all the time. We pose question or answer to what, where, why, when, how, etc. And all the time we interact in such a way that geography is central to our activities and discussions. Now I portray the significance and relevance of geographic dimension. I would put forward one traditional example which is always a good example for highlighting geographic dimension. The spotlight again came in recent time for the preferring geographic dimension to comprehend us understanding the COVID-19 pandemic. It's quite literally been a restoring moment for geography and cartography as they emphasize on space. Not that maps weren't vital visual and analytical tool beforehand, but it took center stage during this crisis situation again. And of course, examining the role of geography and cartography in contemporary infectious disease epidemiology has also meant looking at the past for examples. There's definitely been something in 2020 as inevitably the story of Dr. John Snow and his map of cholera showing the outbreak in London in 1854, which has frequently been recounted. Just to give the significance and importance of geography, I offer a very interesting but classic example of geographic space-oriented analysis, which was carried out by John Snow, a physician and epidemiologist. The John Snow geographic exercise is about judging geographic spatial interactions. He in 19th century unknowingly but very emphatically argued that the space matters. The interactions matter, and thus the geography matters. The example is about cholera outbreak in 19th century in the city of London. In present days, similar examples can be traced on almost daily basis, like as I am mentioning during COVID period, the Bhilwara model or the Dharavi model in our country. So the London example, Dr. John Snow advocated that cholera is a waterborne disease, but the contaminated water is not everywhere, but at specific locations. This was not previously understood. The geographic analysis and this map is famous and classic example of geography-oriented analysis. It provided a classic example of importance of geography to draw inferences. Actually, Dr. John Snow was getting cholera-infected patients from different locations, and Dr. Snow thought that cholera is a waterborne disease. And at that time in the city of London, water was drawn through hand pumps. So he systematically pulled out the handles of hand pumps at specific locations one by one and observed that with the specific hand pumps, where were the drawing pumps contaminated with water which were causing spread of disease. And this way identified specific hand pumps were the real cause of contaminated water distribution and use by human groups at specific locations. Using them, they were getting infected. But Dr. John Snow's geographic inquiry on the specific geographic spatial theme was not confined only to identify the contaminated water areas. It was just the beginning of spatial investigation and queries, as he found many geographic anomalies and abnormalities. This is what geographic study is all about. These anomalies and abnormalities had geographic orientation. Like, for example, the distance and travel path was one important factor for the spread of disease. Some areas were accessible directly, so their contaminated water was not used, and thus they were not infected. Similarly, some areas, despite being close to the infected hand pumps, but the use of water was done differently. And in another case, due to some social reasons, despite the proximity to the infected hand pumps, water was being drawn from other locations or sources, and thus they were not infected. So continuing geographic attributes applied in John Snow example, this example indicated that geographic spatio-temporal analysis has significance, as it considers both spatial and temporal correlations and makes it possible to observe the geographical and temporal distributions of phenomena through visualization of data that contains space and time information. In addition, geographic spatio-temporal modeling enables the investigation of trends over time, whereas geographic modeling only captures information at a specific point in time. If the risk of diseases shows increasing or decreasing trends over time, then the use of geographic spatio-temporal analysis becomes important. In addition, the appropriate use of geographic space-time interaction, this can capture localized clusters that could be related to emerging environmental risks or consistent error in the data recording process. All in all, this very simple, crude geographic analysis, but very effective to understand the geographic spatial significance. So geography is not the domain of geographers alone, but it is useful for everyone. Now we examine the geographic component. First can be the location. In the context of geographic information, it refers, so phenomena existing at any location, in other words, expression to where. Second can be the dependence of phenomena to any location. Here the relationship which will fetch expression to either geographic heterogeneity or geographic similarities. In both cases, geographic dimension is associated. This points towards the geographic differentiation observed in the value of a variable This variation can be expressed in geographic association, geographic interaction, geographic externalities, or even spillovers. Here, Tobler's law is relevant, as everything depends on everything else. But closer things have its influence more. And this is an established fact that influence of any phenomena is greater on nearer locations, and with distance, its influence reduces. Now, there can be 5 geographic themes which is relevant to our discussion. First is location, which answers the question, where now? This can be either absolute or relative locations. Second can be to region, which is space over Earth's surface with uniform characteristics. Here the significance is that how at geographic spaces features human or natural setting they exist, how they are found, whether similar or different. The third is man-nature relationship. It is the oldest theme of geographic spatial inquiry. It focuses on natural setting of any specific location and human response to that setting or human activities which is possible there in response to the prevalent environment. Fourth can be the uniqueness of the location. That is, any place, the geographic space is special, unique due to its specific characteristic that place possesses. Fifth can be the communication, movement, circulation, and diffusion across Earth's surface, which links all regions and places, both physical and human systems, and their interdependence. So the first geographic theme, area analysis, which is basically deals with location. Location refers to a specific place or position on the Earth's surface. There can be 2 types of location, absolute or relative. Absolute location refers to the exact location of a point on Earth's surface. For example, using latitude and longitude coordinates. An example is absolute location is the location of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which is at 29 degree 97 minutes north and 31 degree 13 minutes east. The relative location, on the other hand, describes the place location relative to other sites or landmarks. For instance, one can conceptualize Aligarh city as located east of Delhi, south of Meerut, making it relatively close to these cities than Mumbai or Kolkata. Relative location gives idea of spatial relations among different locations. Relatively can also maybe on the accessibility or dynamism, the changes in features influencing locational perspective. As the modern day travel time has reduced considerably with high-speed vehicles, compare sea routes with air travel, location plays an essential role in understanding the geography of a region. It helps accurately identify and locate different places on the Earth's surface. By examining the location of other areas, one can better understand how various physical and human features evolve and interact with human activities. Again, modern world with its dynamism in economic and social attributes is transforming at quick pace. So rapid transformations are being observed. Location is determined through various tools and techniques. The tools and techniques are also changing, and their access and spread have helped locating places with ease. For example, GPS technology. It has revolutionized how people find their way around unfamiliar areas by providing real-time information about their current location. So spatial science is another tool which represents locations graphically through maps. The second geographic theme is based on area analysis, that is region, which forms region that is geographic space with homogeneous characteristics. This can be drawn on similarities or even dissimilarities. Region is concerned with how geographic areas are similar or different based on their physical or cultural characteristics. Various factors such as language, religion, political boundaries, climate, landform, and economic system can be defined as regions. The concept of region helps us understand the diversity and complexity of our world by grouping places with similar characteristics together. Like formal regions, which exhibit uniformity across a cultural or physical characteristic and are based on measurable data. The example can be the state of Uttar Pradesh. Similarly, functional regions defined by interactions among places based on surrounding environment, physical, social, cultural. For example, the Gangetic Plain. Another can be vernacular, the perceptual regions, which are based on widespread popular perception of existence, like North India or South India. Examining regions help us understand how human societies have developed unique ways of life in response to their environment over time. Another very important and dominant geographic theme deals with man-nature relationship, which have many components. Important among them are natural, social, and economic. And these with time becomes an influential component. Man-environment interaction explores the relationship between human and the natural surrounding around them. It examines how humans modify and adapt to their environment and how the environment affects human behavior and culture, their life and survival over that geographic space. This theme is essential in understanding the impact of human activities on our planet and the consequences that may arise from them. One example of man-nature interaction is the construction of dams. Human builds dams to control water flow, generate electricity, and provide crop irrigation. However, this modification of the natural environment can have both positive and negative impacts. For instance, while dams offer benefits such as flood control and renewable energy production, etc., but they can also lead to adverse effects such as habitat destruction, soil erosion, and displacement of communities living along the river banks. Another geographic theme could be the place. Place refers to a location's unique physical and human characteristic. It considers tangible features such as natural characteristics and intangible elements such as culture, language, religion, traditions that make place distinct from others. Place is an essential geographical concept because it helps us understand how humans interact with the environment. For example, places with fertile soil and abundant rainfall are more likely to be used for agriculture than dry or rocky areas. Similarly, places with natural resources such as minerals or oil can become economic activity centers. Examining area, space helps recognizing commonalities across geographic space in terms of space area, where the pattern and distributions can be identified. This may be the pattern, which is arrangement of entities. Another can be the density, it deals with frequency of event. Another can be concentration, that explains the spread of events. Now, another geographic theme is movement, which points the dynamism on the phenomena and which is the variations with respect to time and space. Outcome of man-nature interactions. Movement refers to the mobility of people, goods, and ideas across space. It explores how and why things move from one place to another and how this movement impacts the world. Movement is categorized into different forms such as human migration, transportation of goods and services, etc. Communication of ideas and cultural diffusion. But in terms of geographic space, different situations may exist, like distance is obvious measurement for movement. But there can be many distinctions, like absolute distance or distance measured in terms of time or cost or even perception based. Moreover, friction of distance results in distance decay. Some examples of geographic movement and distinctions with geographic space interactions. Again, distance and movement have variations as depicted in this slide, like obstacle in path or friction in movement due to topography, or vehicular restrictions, for example, urban streets with one-way movement. You cannot cross the road. You have to cross it after certain distance, etc. So just to sum up the discussion, to highlight the importance of geographic dimension and value to explain, understand, and describe the phenomena effectively and emphatically by adding greater informative content and value, revealing patterns, trends, and anomalies that might otherwise be missed, by helping in situations where the eye might deceive, or through a method of analysis is geographic if the results depend on the locations of the objects being analyzed. By revealing geographic dependence, move the objects and the results may change. All in all, by bringing in geographic dimension, the raw, underdone information turns into useful information. So now you might have understood the significance of geographic dimension, which you can apply in your explanation of any phenomena. So this was my argument about the geographic dimension which we can apply in any discipline, any field. Thank you.